Because when you look at it, actually, again, our younger brethren won't quite be able to cope with the fact that Man United were in the second tier. I mean, they were only in there for one season because they bounced straight back up, and I think that's the only season post-war that they've been at that level. You actually look at the details of that game, and it looked like a great game, and we're going into a bit more detail because I've looked at YouTube, so I've actually found it and a sort of 5 minute match of the day highlights. The crowd, so this is for a second tier game, was 60,585, which was the highest attendance of the season in the whole Football League. I mean, forget just Division Two. This is in Division One. The next biggest on that day was 38,000 at Everton, and only West Brom had a crowd of five figures in the second division. All the rest were under 10,000. That that is remarkable. And when you watch the match today, how as you say, the swaying crowd is something that we've lost now because of all-seater stadiums. But that incredible surge on the terraces is something I still love that. As a Palace fan, I used to go to the Homesdale Road, which was a big end, terracing all the way across. And it just, sometimes you could just, lift yourself off and then get carried 10 yards because your feet won't touch the ground. That sort of experience, I know there are reasons why we don't have that anymore, but it is just something that is firmly embedded in my mind, and I'm sure probably in yours.
It was the thing that really struck me and drew me in. Clearly, the quality of football as well was much higher. United were top of the second division, and
Yeah,
Sunderland was second. There was a real rivalry about who was going to get out of the division then. I think they were at each other the whole way through. United were reviving after a few seasons of misery. Tommy Docherty, the manager, was going for broke. So the football was fantastic, but it was the crowd that really
yeah,
was just so extraordinary. Those figures you've quoted,
mm,
really interesting. The crowd figures. You look at the championship today, there'll be big crowds everywhere. Maybe not 60,000, but
no, no,
there'll be big crowds. There'll be a huge crowd at Leeds. There'll be a big crowd at Ipswich, at Sheffield Wednesday.
Leicester, yeah, yeah,
Every
absolutely,
every club in the championship now will be selling out. And you get huge crowds in the championship. Compared to what it was in Division Two, when United were there. The other thing you have to remember about United was that this was the kind of peak of hooliganism, and
yeah,
there were a lot of people drawn to United. The Docks Red Army laid waste to the market towns of England when they went out there. There were a lot of people enjoying the notoriety of United fans and so on. And so watching it from a distance, watching all that, it was kind of exhilarating, to be a witness to that.
yeah,
It it isn't like that anymore, and in many ways, it's a good thing that
yeah,
it's not like that anymore, and we know what happened as a result. Probably not actually. I mean, Hillsborough was not the result of terracing. It was the result of putting bloody cages in the terracing so that
yeah,
there was a barrier to hit against. Because when you were in the Homesdale Road, there'd be these big sways of people moving 30 or 40 steps down to
yeah, yeah.
celebrate a goal, but then they'd all move back. There wouldn't be that compression at one point. That's the problem with it wasn't the terrace itself. The terrace itself was a weirdly kind of moving beast. It
Mm,
was it was the putting the barriers in that
yeah,
caused the issues.
absolutely. Um, Going back to the match, because as I say, I managed to catch up with the highlights. Couple of things struck me. So Stuart Pearson opened the scoring, and then the guy called Billy Hughes scored twice in the space of 2 minutes. The first one, 15 seconds after Man United's goal, and you could tell there was a bit of tension when Billy Hughes scored the second Sunderland goal, because there was a chant coming out of, I don't know which end it was, but along the lines of "You're going to get your fucking heads kicked in," which was a popular tune in those days. And it was Barry Davies is commentating, and one of the great commentators, and he talks about the second goal when he said United's defence was as wide open as a barn door, which is a description I really quite like. And the other thing that struck me about that, and Sunderland were 2-1 up actually at half time, and then United came back to win with your man Morgan scoring a goal. When Willie Morgan scores that goal at the far post in the 50-odd minute, the commentary from Davis goes, Morgan, the linesman's got his flag up, and there was suddenly a little bit of, 3 or 4 seconds of, what's going to happen here? No, it's a goal, and off they went. Can you imagine that in VAR now? It would take only 15 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the ref presumably just overruled him, and that was that.
Yeah, let's not have a chat about it. Let's not go to whatever.
Well, we're not. We haven't got a little microphone voice piece to have a chat about it.
Indeed. And the other favourite bit of that video, and I'll put the link up for people who listen to this podcast. I would really recommend you see it because it's old-fashioned. It's great. Is as the second half starts, the PA is still reading out the half-time scores. So he's going, Sheffield United 0. And Barry Davies actually says, "I'm not sure how many people are that interested. Let's get on with the game," type thing. It's extraordinary how that could happen. And that United side was, Stepney was still in goal. You had Buchan, you had Jim Holton, you had Brian Greenough, you had your man Morgan, McElroy, McCarthy. They were a good team, and quite rightly they came straight back up again. But
yes, and then Willie sadly fell out with Doherty, and he was moved on. But you can't complain with Doherty brought in Steve Coppell and Gordon Hill, and the following season, just this remarkable forward attacking momentum. Okay, the defense might have been barn door wide open, but there was always a forward momentum about it. The other interesting thing is you're talking about Barry Davies. This was a second division game, and it was on Match of the Day. So the thinking was, no, this is the game of the day, and it's in the second tier. 60,000 crowd would suggest it probably was the game of the day.
Exactly, and we shouldn't just unfortunately, these days, the focus is so much on the Premier League, it sort of gets forgotten that there are 3 other divisions in the league and some very healthy non-league clubs. But as you point out, the attendance is in the second tier, the attendance is in the third tier, and in fact, the attendance when Wrexham and Notts County were going at it last year in non-league, they were getting crowds of 12, 13,000. It absolutely happen in any other country. You wouldn't get anywhere near that. Italy, France, when you go down to the second tier in most European countries, attendances drop off completely. So this football pyramid, which has become a little bit tilted towards the top, is actually why English football is, in my view, the greatest thing. It's not because the Premier League's, such a glitzy, we get all, but it's this base pyramid that makes it that much better than anywhere else. And, everyone can go to a game. Going to non-league football still, for me, is a great pleasure because you can walk around the ground. You can even have a beer. You could even be this close to the managers as they shout from the dugout. That you don't get that going to professional games. And that is another beautiful part of English football, that you have that available on your door. I go and watch Hendon, who are just up the road. It's terrific. And I would always encourage people to go to non-league football as well as follow your professional club. I think it's absolutely superb.
I've got a couple of mates from school who are non-league groundhoppers. Which is, one of them's already got the full 92 league grounds, and he's now doing non-league. And these days I live in Oxford, and they came round recently. They were going to see Oxford City. So I said, "Oh, great, we'll go. I'll come with you." So we went to see Oxford City. Oxford City, like a lot of, unfortunately, just been relegated from the National League, but like a lot of non-league clubs, play on an artificial surface because they get income from renting it out to clubs and schools and so on during the day, 7 days a week, and played really good football. It was a terrific game. Actually, in the National League, you can't have a pint while you're watching the game. You have to. But at half time, we went to the bar, and the chairman was the barman. The chairman was pulling pints for the punters, which is, you don't get better than that, do you? But there were 3,000 there. This is incredible. Everyone goes on about the Bundesliga and how German football culture is thriving, and there are great things about Germany, and the fact that they, you have to have 50 plus or whatever it is, ownership and so on. But if you went to a fifth tier game in Germany, there'd be a man and a dog. Actually, the dog probably wouldn't be bothered to go. I mean. It's just remarkable. And for goodness sake, the Premier League, they have got to get this sorted out and start giving the payments down to the league, because everything about it, everything that is glorious about football in England is based on that pyramid. Not least the fact that the players are loaned out to lower league clubs to learn the game when they're young. You look at the England side there. The England squad. Yeah, Harry Kane played lower league football to learn his trade. I was going to say Conor Gallagher played lower league football, but he didn't. He played for Palace, and that would be very rude to you, Richard. I'm sorry.
Yes, Jim, we're not going to go into that, are we? We're still in the Premier League somehow. We're looking forward to more points deductions across the board. I mean, we've gone full tilt here. So we've gone from Moss Lane to Old Trafford. There's a couple of other questions I've got before I'll let you go. What was your first experience? Because you obviously had to rent your TV. And you watched a lot of football on TV. What was your first experience, say, of an FA Cup final or even World Cup? What's your first memory for either of those or both of those?
I mean, I know this. I know this happened. I'm sure of it. But I remember the 63 FA Cup final on the telly, watching it. United against Leicester, was it? I just remember seeing that black and white on the telly, and then the FA Cup. I used to watch the FA Cup final every year from there on, and remember that completely. 66 World Cup. But as I said, my dad didn't really understand football. So 66 World Cup, we were camping in Germany. Would you believe it? We were on the Rhine in Germany, and we had a dormobile, and I had made, following the lead of my granny and the scarf, I had made a little plaque on the back paper plaque on the back and stuck it to the back of the doormobile, which said England for the Cup. And we were driving through Germany. And the final, I can remember my dad to this day, the final, we're on a campsite on the side of the Rhine. And my dad had tuned in. He had a transistor radio. He tuned in to let me know what was happening in the World Cup final. And he tuned in, and the only radio commentary he could get was Germany, a German language thing. And I remember him standing there and going, oh dear. Oh dear, I think Germany have scored. Somebody called Horst has just scored.
Right, okay.
That was good. My dad didn't really understand.
That's quite a way to take in, the first World Cup final, the only one England won, by being in Germany.
In Germany. Only my dad could have organised that. And then obviously 70 was a game changer. We didn't have a colour telly, but so I can't even say that I remember the colour pictures and the green of the pitches and all that, but I do remember watching the 70. I tell you what, my memory of the 70 finals particularly was the ITV panel on that. Yes. And I remember what we watched the game, and England, Germany, and Cloughie was on the ITV panel, and I remember the gloating at half time in the England-Germany quarterfinal with Cloughie getting very gloating and thinking, we always win. 2-0 up, we always win.
Yeah. The 1970 World Cup, that particular game just happened to be my 10th birthday in Germany. And I do clearly remember my mother bringing me a birthday cake, and I just burst into tears. So she didn't really get football either, and she just thought, why are you crying about something that's going on the other side of the world?
Yes.
That's football for you. It can bring joy, and it can bring complete disaster. Two more things, sorry to ask. Can you remember your first international match at Wembley? I know you went for the Altrincham FA Trophy, but was there an international match where you went, okay, this is it? Because I know you've got your views of Wembley and how it's changed, maybe not for the better. Can you remember your first international match there?
Yeah. I do remember the first Champions League final I went to was at Wembley. It was, you're not going to believe this, it was Barcelona played.
Yes.
I think, did they play? They played it. Sampdoria, I think. Yeah, that's right. About 92, something like that. And I was in the office at the Independent, and the sports editor came in and said, anyone like football? I said, yeah, I do, Charlie. Yeah. He goes, fancy going to the European Cup final tonight? I said, yeah, I've got a ticket. Here you go. Imagine that now. I'm trying to think of my first time I saw England. I'm really sorry, Richard. That's gone from my mind. It must have been expunged in some way. The horrors of what I thought. I'd love to say it was England against Poland when they lost in '74, but it wasn't. I can't remember. I just cannot remember it. I went to loads of games, once I got into the business, England games and so on. I went Euro 96 and so on at Wembley. But no, Wembley was, it was a bit of a dump, the old Wembley, to be honest. And it was a dump to be. I remember the first time I went to a cup final there was the 76 cup final that United lost to Southampton. Yeah. And I just remember the that way going into Wembley, first of all, up the Twin Towers, there was like a Rapunzel-like knot of a rope made of knotted scarves coming out of a kind of window. I was going to say window, but it was just an opening in the tower, and a guy climbing up it and getting it in that way. Quite remarkable. And the other thing I remember was just the cascading torrents of urine down the steps inside.
It is amazing. Say I've done a half dozen already of these, and urine features quite heavily in a lot of people's memories. So David Squires, who's a great cartoonist for The Guardian, his first memory of the County Ground at Swindon was going into the urinals, and there was no one else in there, and there was a guy just pissing in the sink for no apparent reason, because there were plenty of urinals free.
Plenty of urinals.
And then Guy Mowbray, when he went to York and the old Bootham Crescent, he said that the weird thing about that is, and obviously Bootham Crescent is no longer exists, the thing it struck him was the horrible nature of the loos, but actually that's what they miss now about, Bootham Crescent going, it is the loos. So there's definitely, definitely a spin-off here. It started with a piss, but we're not going to go into that right now.
There are still, tell Guy Mowbray he ought to go to either Craven Cottage or Kenilworth Road. There's still some pretty old school loos at Craven Cottage and Kenilworth Road.
Okay, well, I'm sure.
And David Squires, who I think is absolutely fantastic. Swindon Town. This shows, my football journey. I played walking football on Monday at Swindon Town's training ground.
Okay. How did you get on?
How old I am.
Do you walk all over them?
Very good. Very good. It wasn't against Swindon Town.
No. Right. Final question for you. Have you ever taken someone to their first game? So it might be your wife, your son, your daughter, a friend, a particular moment where you did what your dad did for you, and maybe you took the person you're taking to something they weren't expecting to go to. Is there a clear memory of that for you?
Oh my goodness. I have 3 children who are all both very good players and absolutely obsessed with football. And their mother is like my dad, hasn't got a clue, hasn't got the remotest interest. And so I've done, all 3 of them. I mean, I took my son when he was 5 to watch United win the title at Selhurst Park, playing Wimbledon, actually. That I think may have been his first game. I've taken my daughter to Old Trafford and, done the full eyes shut, right, open your eyes, and the look on her face. Which was fantastic. My other son took him. In fact, I remember one time my 2 boys would have been teenagers, and I got them tickets to Old Trafford, and I went in the press box. So they're together. I got them tickets. We all went together, and I had a pair of binoculars so I could just see what they were up to. And there was this fantastic moment, which kind of was a slightly different experience for them than for me, with the tumbling terrace and so on. And I caught them both. They both stood up in the stand that they were in, and they were chanting. They were trying to get a chant going. Mm-hmm. And they were tapped on the shoulder by the person behind them and told to sit down. And I watched them sheepishly sit down. Right. So, that's the difference in experience between what I got as a teenager and what they got. They got a bollocking for trying to start a chant.
Yeah, there's a cautionary tale for modern football. That isn't sitting well with me, I must say. There we go. I mean, that has been a fantastic journey, as I say, from your granny's knitted scarf, the rosettes of the Barrow fans, all the way to, scarves being used in Rapunzel-like method to get into Wembley, and then, down to you taking all your kids to, big matches, let's say. Is there one thing that you still retain about that first match? I know we've spoken about it, but is there one thing that you think, right, that is what actually got me hooked? That is the thing that was, the launch pad for my love of football?
I think it was the communality of it. I think it was the shared experience. You don't really understand. I mean, watching it on the telly, and I was an obsessive watcher of football on the telly. Yeah, you can understand the tactics. Yeah, you may even get a better view of what's going on. But it's the shoulder to shoulder communality that really strikes you when you go to a game, and that's what you really, really love. And it was being with my lads at a game when I'll tell you, being with my lads, the three of us together in the Manchester derby when Rooney scored that overhead kick, and that shared experience of father and son, and going back, and my dad, not a clue about football, but the loveliest man, just taking me there, and that communality and that shared experience. It's like nothing else really, and that's still there with me. Going to Oxford City, seeing the people watching on. Going to Wembley last night to watch England against Belgium, and the experience of those people together. That is really what will always stick with you.
Absolutely. And just referring to that Man United Sunderland game back in 1974, did you keep any mementos from that?
No, I'm pretty poor at that. I have still got my Champions League '99 ticket somewhere. Mm-hmm. I say that I've got it somewhere. I'm pretty poor at that, actually. I've got a good friend who I was at school with, who is a mad United fan, and I went to his house the other day, and it was like going to the reading room at the British Museum. He had all the programs of all the matches he'd been to, and I loved it. And I just thought, what? You've never kept anything, have you? What is your problem? Why didn't you do what he did? Because what I've experienced, blimey, incredible, and I've not got any of it now.
Well, I've got good news for you, because I've managed to source the programme from Man United Sunderland that is actually due to drop through my door today. I wish it had come before, because I could show it to you, but I will send it. I will send it on to you.
Wow!
Small thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Wow, blimey! If you told me that before, I'd have been overwhelmed. Fantastic.
Well, I didn't want to overwhelm you too early, Jim, because, I had to have you, fully objective and talking about it. But it's been an absolute pleasure going through everything from, as I say, Altrincham up to Old Trafford to Wembley and beyond, and even, taking in Oxford City. So thank you very much for your time.
It's been brilliant. Thank you so much.